All right, guys, here we go. All right, listen. Now, I told you I'm not going to do any more Jubilee reactions, okay? Because they asked people not to specifically, I'm assuming specifically do like long form reactions of like, doing how I do it. React to the full video, even though I had a lot of meaningful commentary. It means a lot to me. And that would normally be fine, except for the fact that they asked for it originally. Like, that's how they blew up, and now they're like, don't do that, and they're going back and they're striking people's old videos, which they've done to me for a while now, and, the whole Ab and Preach thing blew up, and whatever. But that being said, there have been a few people who have been making videos about them, about, like, a specific, it was the fat one. Like, the fit versus fat. That was the conversation. And they had people on, and, like, I want to talk about it. The thing now, because I'm seeing people react to that. So they're making their own, react videos. I'm going to look at August the Duck's one, where it's more transformative than mine. So I should be fine. I'm going to take a look at it. This one centers around Mr. Walter's wife, Walter. And I'm curious about what happens here, man. That's pretty much it. I'm curious. So, yeah, let's get this party started. Before we do, if any of these moments in the video resonate with you, drop the timestamp, okay? It helped me out a lot. Appreciate it. Let's go.
Okay. I mean, if I was president, hell, I'd put all of them in a fat concentration camp so they can concentrate on dieting and exercising, because being fat is completely not acceptable.
Oh, God. Wow. That was... Listen, we have to be honest here. Myron doesn't believe anything he's saying. It's all shock value because, his audience is dwindling. He's demonetized on YouTube and he's just kind of struggling. So he's pretty much just going to say whatever he feels like he needs to say for whatever attention. Obviously, that's silly. We do have an issue with our health. We got to deal with it somehow. A lot of people have like addiction issues. Technology makes people lazier, but a lot of fat people are massively important to the world. Truck drivers tend to be overweight because they're on the road all the time and it's difficult for them to get like nutritious foods. So I think I'm not going to go into why it's really stupid to put in a concentration camp for that. Although maybe people with ADHD could use it. I can struggle to concentrate sometimes. I think that the moral of what I will say is you should probably try not to look at somebody who's fat and only derive value from their weight, because there's a lot of other things that they could have value in. Right? That's not the only thing about you. It's like a vice. To me, being overweight is like smoking cigarettes or drinking alcohol, having like an alcohol issue or something along those lines. To some extent, it's like an addiction. But, that's pretty much all I'll say from that.
As I'm sure today is going to end civilly. There are a few topics on the internet that will bring along controversy no matter where you decide to discuss them. And today we are talking about one of the biggest of them all. Now, no pun intended there.
Oh, I didn't even think about that, brother.
But over the last week or so, I've gotten quite a few comments and a few DMs asking me to check out a video that the channel Jubilee recently released. It's a video part of their Middle Ground series titled Is Being Fat a Choice? Fit.
I mean, it depends on how you want to answer that. It can be a very interesting conversation if you want it to be. It gets into the whole concept of free will, right? And like, do we have free will, or are we all just an amalgamation of our genetics and our environmental impacts that have conditioned us to confront certain issues with certain answers? Like your upbringing and genetics have decided that if somebody walks up to you and asks you if you want to smoke a cigarette, you'll say, "No way, Jose," which is a little racist because the only people who've asked me if I wanted cigarettes were white. So it can be interesting. At the end of the day, like, yeah, being fat is like your choice, but it's not an easy choice to make. Nobody wants to be fat, but it's tough. Just eat less. True. But one of the problems is like coping mechanisms. You might be somebody who has a really healthy coping mechanism and, maybe you go for a walk or maybe you get really upset and you just fucking start eating. You know what I mean? It's like smoking cigarettes. Ask people who try to smoke or try to quit smoking cigarettes and it's difficult. It's kind of like that. So, it's an interesting conversation, but it doesn't really factor in how difficult some of the stressors can life be and the negative, we'll say the negative coping mechanisms that some people have. So you should always try to make more meaningful progress towards not being overweight, obviously. Especially, but don't beat yourself up over it, or else you're going to end up regressing. You're going to end up it's not going to have a positive impact because you're going to be so stressed about not doing the right thing, and then it's going to burn you out, and blah, blah, blah. There's a whole thing to get to.
Men versus fat men. Now, if you've never heard of this video...
Also, and I know I'm pausing a lot, why not women? I feel like men and women have a drastically different relationship with losing weight and whatnot. And that's, part of it's listen, they just have a different impact with it. I remember, for multiple reasons, I remember once talking to somebody who was like some kind of a fitness nerd with like a degree. And they're talking about how for men, the way that we collect body fat is more dangerous when we're overweight than for women for some reason. Like it crowds the arteries in a particular way or the organs in a particular way, which I found interesting. And then using some anecdotal experience, my wife and I are proportionally like the same weight, but I am significantly less healthy than her. I have high blood pressure, I have the big three: blood pressure, cholesterol, sugar, right? She doesn't have any of those, right? But then there's also like different, I think, genetic proclivities. I feel like men have more muscle than women, and muscle takes more energy to maintain than fat. I don't think that's a hot take at all, right? So our resting calories are going to be increased. I feel like men are more likely to want to eat meats and proteins more than women. And we know that the thermogenics, I think it's the right word, right? Thermogenics of protein are higher than the thermogenics of like carbs and fat. But basically what I'm saying is that if you eat like 1,000 calories of protein, and these are rough numbers, but it'll take like 200 calories just to process that protein. Where if you eat like 1,000 calories of fat, it'll take only like 50 calories to process. So if you're a man and as a man, I feel like men are more likely to want to eat meat, have more meat cravings. You're going to have more muscle because protein also contributes to muscle maintenance and building. And then you're also going to have higher thermogenics just to process that muscle. And then I also feel like men have higher proclivities to like working out. I feel like it's just something that men find more enjoyable, whether it's biological or genetic or whatever. So I feel like it's easier for men to like lose weight, and there's a different experience than with women. And it would have been interesting to have that female representation there,
Video series, or Jubilee in general. Basically, Jubilee is sort of a social debate channel. They bring people together on camera and have them talk about divisive topics. They also do some weird dating videos, but I think
the fact that they pulled Myron on suggests to me that Jubilee is just like they're posturing for attention in some capacity. Myron is never like Jubilee is not a platform that is meant to inspire legitimate, intelligent or productive debate, because Myron is incapable of that, and anybody that's watched him for 5 minutes knows that. Very clearly, it's just kind of like a shock value thing. He's never going to say anything honest or intelligent. He's never going to say anything productive. He's never going to move his mental position on any topic. He's just saying things for attention so that he can try to spark people to go to Fresh and Fit, which is the shirt that he's wearing. So like Jubilee, it's a good clown show, but it's like a clown show. That's really what it boils down to.
Mainly known for these kind of social experiment / debate type videos. And the Middle Ground series is exactly what it sounds like. They bring people together.
And I don't puzzle a lot, especially since they cut a majority of their content, and sometimes they can cut it out of context. Like I think Blair White was complaining that they cut some of what she said out of context. And they might do it for brevity, but like if they're really trying to encourage like a legitimate positive debate space, this is just not going to be the way. They don't orchestrate it in that way.
On opposite sides of the spectrum when it comes to certain social topics, and they have them try and reach a middle ground. Except that's actually not what happens literally ever. A long time ago, Jubilee learned that nobody wants to see people get along, so they always have one or two characters who really ham it all up and get an argument going for the camera. And this video is one of the most egregious examples of that ever. They brought on none other than Myron from the Fresh.
I feel like these men wouldn't be able to handle fat women in a conversation, though, as much as they don't respect fat men. They can't comprehend anything from a fat woman. That's true. I mean, Walter's wife literally has a Red Pill podcast, which is about disrespecting women as much as possible and creating a male victim complex of crybabies that just blame all the problems in the world on women. So, like, yeah, absolutely, that's true.
In Fit podcast.
He's also a secretly homosexual. And so he hates women a bit more, even more because of that, because he feels forced to date women. Even though he wants to date Walter,
Asked to talk to people.
There's nothing wrong with being gay, by the way, guys, okay? But don't closet yourself.
About whether or not being fat is a choice. Now, if you don't know who this guy is, don't worry. I think you'll get a pretty good idea of his character during this video. I'm not going to waste any time explaining who this guy is because, one, I think you just watching...
Why didn't they ask me to be on this? I would have fucking loved to.
this video is going to do a better job than I would do trying to explain the guy. And 2, I've got over an hour of footage to scrub through to get all
Hey, we need a fat fuck to come and actually say something intelligent.
the good bits. We might be here
I didn't watch it, so
a while. Let's begin. Please subscribe.
Do you think just being in a fat body and being in the public space encourages obesity?
It's a weird conversation. How do you answer that question? Do you think it encourages obesity? I would no. What a weird question. I don't think it encourages anything. Let's be absolutely real. I'm gonna be absolutely real, okay? All right, because I looked at the prompts, and one of the prompts of this video is like, do you think that fat people are like? Have you ever been disgusted by a fat person? Right? Yeah, I'm a fat person, and I have looked at fat people and gone, that's disgusting. I'm not proud of it, and I don't say it out loud and try to shame people for it. But like, yeah. So like, if you see a fat person and you're gonna be like, oh, I don't want to be that. Nobody wants to be fat. Now, for me, it's when I look at like my 600-pound life, I'm like, damn. I'm sitting there chowing down on like some fucking nasty food. I'm just like, Domino's. I got a whole fucking thing of Domino's. Like, look at these fat fucks, you know. But I don't think that fat people existing in public is doing anything to encourage fat people. I think that the lack of conversation, like the lack of conversation, is like I feel like technology is the overwhelming majority of the reason why we have more fat people. Everybody stays inside on their phone and their computer, and not me. I'm doing like what is my job? It's easier. It's easier to be lazy. Like I feel like people always gravitate to be like lazier. Right, we want our jobs to be done easier, so we take advantage of that, and we haven't really adjusted how to kind of compensate for our, ease of work. We'll say
Yes.
Shame is what led me to an eating disorder.
Whose fault is that?
that makes
What we're looking
whose fault is that? Probably the society. I remember when I used to fucking like. I was like an overweight kid, but I wasn't that overweight. I would go to the YMCA. I was actually very athletic and very active as a kid, but I was always overweight. And I remember I got like self-conscious about it because you see things like The Biggest Loser where it's like, oh, you got to lose like 5 pounds a week. That's really good, which it's not. It's extraordinarily unhealthy for like almost every single person at every single size to lose that much weight that quickly. So I got to a point where I just started drinking Diet Cokes at school, and I wouldn't bring lunch. And what do you think I did when I got home? I fucking binge ate, right? Like So yeah, that's what ends up happening.
looking for is
Whose fault is that?
stability.
Probably like societies.
That's your
It's-
fault.
it's
See, the
an
problem is that you're a
amalgamation.
professional victim.
All right.
Okay.
So not even 10 seconds in, and we've already got phrases like professional victim being thrown around. So I
Yeah, that's like a buzzword in a lot of instances. He's buzzwording.
think you should be getting clued in pretty quickly here. Spoiler alert, I don't really
Spoiler alert, do we see any of their legs? By the way, this guy's probably the fucking got some massive quads. But do we see any of their
around.
quads?
So I think you should be getting clued in pretty quickly.
Like, why are they always wearing pants? I've never seen Myron in shorts. Show me the
here.
quads.
Spoiler alert,
Show me your quads. Greg Doucette probably has some solid. You could see he has some solid quads.
I don't really
Let me see that he probably saw quads. Let me see your legs, Myron.
feel like making a 3-hour-long video, so we're going to be jumping around mainly to the bits where Myron talks, because for the most part, everybody else here is pretty reasonable.
Yeah, I can imagine. I've seen some of Greg Doucette's content. Like, he's a reasonable guy. Like, like most of these guys are probably. They brought Fresh on there so that he could be obnoxious. Right?
Greg Doucette is a little questionable at times.
He's fine. He could be a little bit of a sussy baka, but he's all right. He's fine. You know what I mean? I think he means well. When you look at somebody like Greg Doucette, he means well, right? Myron doesn't mean well. He's just being obnoxious for attention.
As much as I love to watch a good natty or not, I've got to admit, some of the stuff he says is a little bit out there, but nothing compares to Myron.
I have felt disgusted looking at a fat body.
I already said, yeah. I hate to I'm ashamed of it, but yeah.
Can our agreeers please
Dude, I don't have chicken legs. Okay, you know what?
step forward?
I threw my back out, so I'm in a little bit of pain, but I don't have freaking chicken legs. I don't know what you're talking about, all right? I don't have chicken legs, all right? I figured out why I threw my back out. I was watching Mike Israetel, though. I'll explain in a second, okay? But I still got them. I still got some. They're getting there, What are you talking about? What are you talking about? They're not that bad. They're not that big, but they're, like, decent. I got some decent quads. I definitely have some decent calves, dude. All right? My calves are fun. You can't really see them. My calves are good. I can't even get them in the fucking camera angle, dude. There we go. Got solid calves. All right? We're looking a little leaner. We're looking a little leaner. Okay? What are you talking about? Don't make fun of my fucking legs. All right? Don't make fun of my gains. Don't make fun of them. You know what I'm saying, dude? Don't make fun of these. I'm sleeping a little bit. Got a little bit of a sleeper build. What are you talking about? All right? What are you talking about? The reason, by the way, I always used to train with a belt for my heavier sets. And I haven't been doing that since I got back, because I'm like, I don't need to. And I was actually watching because I'm like, what the fuck? I threw my back out. Squatting. Never happened to me before. So I was watching like Renaissance periodization Mike Israel talking about belts. And it makes sense. He's like, yeah, there are people who will get held back because their core gets sore because I do a lot of compound movements. I'm doing like rows. I'm doing overhead press. I'm doing squats. I'm doing like stiff leggeds. I'm doing front squats. My core was sore, but not my legs. So I got to pull the belt out again. I think next time once I recover, and I'm going to have to start operating with that. Kind of figure out, give myself some of a rest though. I need to give myself a little bit of rest because I was just coming up on my last rep and I just lost position. Like I knew like my abs just kind of gave out. I lost my uprightness on it. I was just like, fuck. I just left the gym. I was so upset with myself. So I'm going to come back in and give myself a little more pep in the step, if you know what I'm saying. Thank you for the $2 from Roomba Rocket. I just came to that. Incredible.
Whoever feels compelled to start us off.
Well, it's unacceptable to be fat.
Okay. That's a great start. I've been way skinnier than I am now, and I've been way heavier than I am now.
Oh, God bless, man.
Was I less valuable at one point in there?
Well,
No. I mean, not really. You're going to be perceived as less valuable. I mean, here's the thing. Like, I don't think that's a productive conversation. Are you less valuable if you're fat? I mean, maybe attractiveness-wise, you lose value, but like, why focus on one part of your value? Like, if you're a super hard worker who pulls 60 hours a week, you're like a great dad, you're a great father, you're a great uncle. I'm just describing my Uncle Ed. You know, you're a good guy, you're like a family man, you try your best to do the right thing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and you're overweight. I mean, like, are you a valueless person? No. You know?
I mean, you can make an argument that you're less valuable when you're fatter because you drain resources, but that's a whole other conversation.
Well, I mean, if you earn your own resources, like, who gives a shit?
But yeah, I mean, in general, being fat is unacceptable because you control every single morsel of food that goes into your mouth.
Yeah, so it's not good, but unacceptable is quite intense, okay? What's unacceptable is looking at a woman who said that they were assaulted and saying that like it was your fault for, you know, talking to the guy in the first place. So that's unacceptable behavior.
Okay.
It shows a lack of discipline. It shows a lack of character. It shows a lack of
Definitely shows a lack of discipline, for sure. Absolutely, I agree with that.
temperance. And when you're fat, it's an outward manifestation of your inadequacies.
All right, so a lot to unpack.
I don't think it's that deep. I just like to eat, and I get stressed, and I eat. I don't think it's a manifestation of all your inadequacies. I think it's a little disproportionate, but
Here, first of all, fat people are less valuable because they drain more resources. What the fuck does that even mean? What
like if you're living off government, and yeah, I guess I could agree, maybe. I don't know.
resources are we talking about here? Do you just get to pick and choose which resources are okay to consume? Because Myron, you've got a lot of fancy cars, which objectively take up more resources than
That is true.
an economy car. Why is that okay? And then a big thing that's going to come up over and over and over again during this. Myron, and people like Myron, pretty much everybody in that red pill space, think that they get to choose what is important for everybody. Does being lean and being muscular require more discipline than being overweight? Yes, obviously.
Yeah. Well, being lean doesn't necessarily require more discipline. Some people just don't have the same eating as other people, but being like muscular and like being fit, yeah, that definitely takes work. Absolutely.
Nobody's going to argue that. But saying it's a display of your inadequacies, Myron, I'm sure
I think that's how it works for Myron. Maybe it might be a display of his inadequacies if he was like dealing with that particular issue, or that's probably what he tells himself. Like, I don't have any inadequacy being displayed through my obesity. I'm literally just like to eat when I'm happy, and I like to eat when I'm not happy, and I eat too much. You know what I mean? It's just like a fucking problem. But
a million things that are harder than having a six-pack that you cannot do. Why do you think you get to choose what display?
I would say that it's harder for like the truck driver who's working 11-hour shifts every single day and doesn't get to see his family but like once a week or once every other week. That's obese. That's harder to do than being a fit person who runs a podcast and doesn't really have to do any real meaningful work, because that's the condition that Myron's in. Like, he doesn't have a real job. Right? Like, I'm sure he works hard at what he does, but what hard work is when it comes to doing a podcast is nowhere near the same as what hard work is when it comes to becoming a truck driver, which I think is a great example because it's like the most popular job in like 27 states. It's not, it's a different thing. You know, when you isolate and look at just obesity and be like, oh, look, you're a fat person. Like, the fat is bad. That's true. Like, being fat is bad. But like, what about the collection of life experiences that like led you to being that fat? If you're working 11, 12-hour days, regardless of what you're doing, and you're just kind of eating quickly just to eat, and you don't really have time to sit down and like properly diet or get proper nutrition or go to the gym because you're pulling 60-hour work weeks just to put food on the table for your family, and you're coming home to your family, and you're a good mom or you're a good dad, you're a good parent, maybe you're a good aunt or uncle, or you're a good grandparent, and you're good this, and you have all these different aspects of life where you're like I'm excelling here, but I'm doing really bad here. You know, all of a sudden the fatness is like, oh, like that is almost the karmatic build of a person. It's like nobody can be perfect, and there are going to have to be concessions, right? That's where that tiger looks cool as fuck, brother. That's kind of where we're at. That's what it comes down to.
Plays an inadequacy. Why aren't you a surgeon? Why aren't you an astrophysicist? Why aren't you a world-class athlete who plays a professional sport for a living?
Why are you bald, Myron?
By definition.
And why do you hide it by getting hair extensions? That's kind of cringe, no?
You are inadequate to those people compared to your ability to do what they do for a living. Why aren't you more muscular? Why aren't you more lean? Why aren't you the biggest guy?
How come he doesn't show his legs? Maybe he has really nice legs. But I wonder why he never shows his legs. I was always curious to me.
On the Jack side of the discussion. Are these all inadequacies? Because if so, this is the pot calling the kettle black. You've got a lot to work on, clearly.
Yeah,
you
so
were
I've been in all
before,
spectrums.
yeah.
Like, I'm naturally skinny.
Yeah.
And then I was like, all right, I'm going to get fat as an experiment.
Yeah.
Did it. And then I was like, all right, now I'm going to lose the weight. And then all I did was just track my calories, ate the same food every single day.
Yeah.
Went to the gym 4 or 5 times a week. Okay. And everything was controlled, and it got done. Was it monotonous? Of course. Was it boring?
I agree with you there.
You found it boring? How come I can't ever find this guy's legs?
I am naturally this way. This is with working out 4 or 5 times a week.
That's not true.
This is 100%.
Well, there's a whole the conversation of like how genetics has an impact on people's weight is interesting. There are people with bigger frames, but there's also genetic predispositions to wanting to eat more food in different ways. Like, it's so complicated, right? Like, for somebody who's naturally skinny, you don't struggle. Well, you might struggle with being underweight, but Myron doesn't seem to be that thing. For somebody who's like naturally, let's just say normal when it comes to their eating, it's not going to be hard for you to, or as hard to gain or lose weight, you know? But like someone like me, like, for, you know, my people, we like to eat, you know what I mean? So, and by the way, that doesn't make it's okay. Everybody has their different struggles, and it's not like an excuse. I'm just saying, you know.
Yeah,
bro.
Nah, bro.
No,
Come to the gym with
it's
me.
not.
This
It's,
is me
it's not
working out.
natural at all, because at the end of the day, if you don't lose weight, by definition, you're not in a calorie deficit.
Well, just to be clear, this guy's really not that overweight. He's probably not unhealthy at his weight, so I don't know really why his weight matters.
If you're not in a calorie deficit, then you're gonna either maintain or gain weight, and that's the problem. Is that
totally.
people don't
And-
track their calories.
And that's true.
Sure, you don't have to track your calories to lose weight. It will obviously work if you track your calories, but there are auto-regulatory things that you can do to lose weight. I think it's like for men especially. You know, you always see the memes, at least I do because I'm married, all the memes that are like, oh, my husband and I tried to lose weight. He stopped eating chips and he just lost like 10 pounds. You know, there's some things that you can do to just auto-regulation lose weight. And, you know, like there is portion control. Again, I would go watch Renaissance Periodization, Mike Israetel. I've been watching a lot of his videos lately. He talks about like coaches that don't do calories, but they do portion sizes instead. So that it's mentally just kind of different. You know, you can introduce eating vegetables, especially leafy greens, like 10 minutes before your meal, letting that fill you up a little bit, making sure you drink the right amount of water before you start eating. That's another thing that can help a lot. Exercising in general, for whatever reason, at least in my experience, makes me not want to eat as much sometimes. Like I just kind of get off that almost that runner's high. there are so many different things that you could do auto-regulation wise. You don't necessarily have to track calories. You know, sometimes it's just, you know, implementing healthier standards. And that's why, you know, if you're somebody that's like overweight and you're trying to lose weight, you probably shouldn't make your number one goal to lose weight. I know that sounds silly, or you should make it that your primary or only goal. It sounds a little bit silly that I'm saying that, because like, well, that sounds counterintuitive. But the thing is that like, you don't like, being overweight is it's a symptom of being unhealthy, right? So if like I'm very overweight, like I'm not overweight because I ate like a lot of really good lean meats and proteins and like vegetables, and like I'm overweight because I eat the wrong foods, right? I probably prioritize tasting good foods over being healthy, and that's obviously a problem. But if you decide to go like, you know what, I'm going to make one small change instead of trying to make a huge change, then you're going to most likely be better off in the long run, right? Like I feel like everybody who's tried to lose weight has said, okay, I'm going to start eating really well. And you start eating really well. And then you kind of burn out at a certain point. Maybe you have a day or a couple days where you're a little rough. I've gotten sick before and I'm like, fuck, I don't want to eat healthy food today. And then, you know, you were losing weight and then you stop losing weight and then you get discouraged. You go, this has been really hard. I hate this. I'm going to stop doing it. And then you just stop doing it. I've had that experience. But if you're like, you know what, let me just go walk a half hour every single day, and you do that for a month, and that was your goal, was to walk. It wasn't to lose weight. It was to walk. Even if after a month you didn't lose any weight, you started walking, and you're going to be healthier being 300 pounds walking 3.5 hours a week, basically. That's healthier than being 300 pounds and not walking at all, right? So health, you just make better choices, not perfect choices, is what you really, you know, what you really need to do.
But people burn at their resting metabolic rate a different set of calories.
Doesn't matter.
All right, so unfortunately, Myron is going to say some reasonable stuff throughout this video.
He's not wrong, but he has no empathy or understanding of like what he's saying in any like meaningful capacity.
An hour-long video. It's bound to happen.
Like Myron's the kind of person who doesn't understand what it's like to have like the struggle of being overweight, so he's not going to be able to take that into account because he also just fundamentally lacks any empathy for anything outside of himself.
For Myron, though, he says so many insane things that are just purely hypocritical and contradictory that it's really hard to take those reasonable things he says seriously, because you kind of lose respect for what he's saying within the first 5 minutes. For example, he says, I am naturally skinny. You can rewind it and listen to him say, I am naturally skinny. This guy on the right in the plaid shirt, like 20 seconds later, says, I am naturally this way, assuming he means bigger. And he's like, no, you're not. Nope. That's wrong. This is delusion.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, if you're saying you're naturally skinny, obviously you're also conceding that other people are naturally different body types. And again, it's not just how big your frame is or the way that you deposit fat. It's also like your biological and environmental, but your biological proclivities to certain foods, we'll say. So people just have different levels of hunger and they have different ways of coping with their stress. That doesn't mean that it's okay that you should be like, oh, you know what, I have a different way of dealing with my stress. Let me just be a big fat fuck and make an excuse. No, that's not appropriate. But it's good to understand these different things and understand your particular struggles, you know?
This is thinking that your personal experience and the way that you have found things to work applies to...
And, sorry, I'm talking so much, but I also feel like it's harder for women. Another reason I think it's harder for women is because women have more emotional swings than men, right? It's very difficult for women when they go through different hormones, especially when they're going through like their period and there's hormones are cycling, and men's hormones cycle too, but it's just much more intense, I feel like, for women. It's very difficult to deal with your consumption of food because you're constantly going through different mood swings and different feelings and different emotions, and like it could just be very difficult to deal with when you're drastically jumping back and forth and all over the place. It can be very frustrating. It can make it much more difficult to deal with your shit.
All 8 billion people who live on the planet. First, let's address the elephant in the room. Do a lot of people make weight loss a lot harder and a lot more complicated than it should be? Yes. I've talked about this a lot on my channel, surprisingly, probably because I cover so many people doing insane diets, but a hard truth for a lot of people to swallow is that weight loss is not near as difficult as people make it out to be. It usually comes down to a lack of discipline, a lack of commitment, and self-dishonesty. Now, those things that I just talked about can be hard to achieve and overcome, but losing weight itself, not so much. It's a relatively basic process that normally...
I would say losing weight is very simple for anybody, but it can be very difficult for some people based on like their particular patterns that they grew up with or their like biological proclivities or whatever word you want to use.
Breaks down only when a person gets it wrong. Now that's not always that person's fault, which is something we're going to talk about later, but all of this is to wrap back around to saying that claiming that the way that your body looks when you eat in a way that feels, quote, natural is the correct way for a body to look is ridiculous. You can't say, oh, I get to be skinny and underweight naturally, but you can't be bigger than average naturally. That's not how it works. Every single thing that this guy says is motivated by his personal experiences. There's nothing objective about what he says.
But
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that 100%.
you're passing judgment on somebody's body that you know nothing about. Now, on the
Yeah, for sure.
flip side, what if I turned around and I did the same thing to you? You're talking about how fit and stuff that you are, but you're over there and you're smallest compared to these other guys.
That is very true.
So how does that feel if someone comes? No, because you said shame, right?
That's a little.
You said shame, right?
Yeah.
So how
That's-
does that feel if someone comes up and they start shaming you for size? Like, come on, it goes both ways.
We're just in the
Sure.
first
So,
prompt. We got to be
here's the
careful
thing.
about targeting each other too directly. You
No, I mean,
definitely-
I'm not offended. It's fine. He's emotional,
No, it goes
and that's
in
fine.
every.
He's emotional. He got offended. Myron got offended by when he heard that. It was a reasonable point.
direction.
He's obviously very.
It's because I don't think Myron I don't think he knows what the fuck he's doing. I think that he just goes to the gym and he's like, yeah, this is fine. All right, show us your legs, Myron. Maybe he'll fucking prove me wrong.
triggered.
The mental gymnastics that must be going
He's
on
just
inside
triggered.
this guy's head.
I'm upset, so you're fucking triggered, pussy.
Gotta be gold medal worthy. He's gonna say over and over and over and over again that shaming somebody is the best way to get any result out of them. Yet when somebody shames him, now they're emotional. Now they're triggered. All of his arguments are baseless. They all cave in on themselves. And it sucks because nobody in this video ever really picks up on it. I watched this entire video just waiting on somebody to be like, well, Myron, I think your haircut's stupid. Your podcast is dog shit. I don't like the way you dress. Myron, I don't think that's a very good name. Because you absolutely know this guy would be like, well, I don't really care. I'm the alpha here. You're just triggered. He would have fallen apart if you asked him, why did that shaming not work on you, buddy? Why are you not changing your haircut? Why are you not making a completely new podcast? Why aren't you changing your clothes? Why aren't you changing your name? He proves time and time again throughout this video that everything he says doesn't actually work because whenever it's reversed, he does not react in the way that he says.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fundamental point here is that Myron thinks that shame is a productive tactic to get somebody to change something about themselves, which it like almost never is. For some people, it can be. I think for most people, shame is not, right? Fundamentally speaking, everybody responds. Everybody will respond well to stress, as long as it's not more stress than they can handle. Different people have different capacities for stress, and they manifest in different ways. So there are some people, I would say not most, that if you shame them for being fat, they'll be like, you know what, I have to change this. And that could be very motivating for them. But for most people, that's going to be destructive to them. It's not going to help, right? Or at least over shaming. Like, I believe in productive shame. It's okay if you look in the mirror and you're like, you know, I don't really like the way I look. I feel like self-conscious and I don't feel good about myself. That's a productive shame, as long as it motivates you to be healthier. But unproductive shame is where you feel like the walls are caving in on you and there's nothing that you can do and nothing that you can change. And you think that everybody's constantly judging you to a degree where you just don't care and you give up. And listen, I've been there before where I don't even care if I live anymore. So I don't think about the future. Like, there's a lot of people there, especially when it comes to like financial stressors, where you're like, I don't care if I'm alive, so why do I care? Why do I care to diet? Right? That's a thought that people have. That's why it's very complicated.
Will.
Now let's reset. Jacked men are more attractive than fat men.
Maybe, yes. I don't know how to deal with that question. Like, what? It sounds very extreme. Like, how fat and how jacked? I would say that like a person that takes care of their body and that's like a bit fit is going to be more attractive. Like this Asian guy in the fit side, he's probably going to be considered more attractive than most of the other guys in this thing in general. I would say the two most attractive men here are going to be this fit Asian kid and this like chubby fat guy, white guy. Because I think most people, for when it comes to somebody that's like super attractive, that could be intimidating to some people. Especially if they're like way out of your range. Maybe this is me projecting. But if I see somebody that's like way out of what I consider my range, I don't find them attractive anymore because I don't think that they could ever find me attractive, right? I think most people would gravitate towards like a guy who's like in good shape, but not like super buff and jacked. That can be very intimidating, kind of gay because you're doing that for men. Let's be real, okay? And then for like this guy here, again, like he's more attainable. He's also taller and he's not really that big. So, I feel like it's subjective, but generally speaking, it depends on how jacked or how fat. I would lean more towards like the fit side, if I had to say. But that's like that's a big question. I feel like that's a pretty big question, you know? That's like a loaded question in my opinion.
The agreeers, please step forward.
How come there's 4 guys over there? All right, we're living in a bizarre world where people don't see the truth. Like, how is it possible that they're thinking, no, being obese and unhealthy is more attractive than being fit and healthy? How is?
Well, they didn't say being obese. They said fat, right? So like we have a wide spectrum. You know, you have to apply a little bit of your brain to it.
How is this possible?
Actually, you know what? This is precisely why a majority of women find the majority of men is unattractive.
Because I've been so surprised to see on Instagram, there'll be like guys doing like an outfit try on, like not in shape in the slightest bit, and all the comments are women like, I wish like men knew this is how we wish they looked, and like, oh, this is like the
Liars
dream.
for
This
social
is-
media. Liars for
look good,
One thing
for
about you
clout.
can never believe what women say, man.
Guys, so there are genuinely times when I'm watching a video like this, and I have to
Jesus
step
Christ.
back and remind myself, this is not real life. The average person on the street
This is one of those situations, and you have to be very careful when it comes to this prompt. Jacked men are more attractive than fat men. You have to be careful with these. It's intentionally an extraordinarily vague question that you can apply your own life experience to. They don't say how jacked. Are we talking about somebody that's like Jay Cutler in his prime jacked? Very hard working guy, looks really good for a bodybuilder. Most women may not necessarily like that. Or are we talking about somebody that's more like, I don't know, like Mike O'Hearn, which is like a little bit more, he does like more fitness, right? Are we talking about a fat guy that's like my 600-pound life? Or are we talking about, I don't know, some fat guy that's not ugly as shit, right? Who are we like, who are we talking? Give me an example of a fat guy that's not. We don't know. There's so many varying degrees there. So it's an intentionally provocative question. And the reason I bring that up is because like I think that Jubilee, they pretend that they're a debate space, but really they do their best to bring on very provocative people sometimes, or especially in this case where you have like Myron here, so that they can, you know, they perform as like a reasonable debate space, but the reality is it's just Jerry Springer, but pretending it's not. You know, it's Steve Wilkos.
does not even know discourse like this exists. This is online speak, for lack of a better term. These guys are going to sit here for like 10 minutes and discuss attraction as this objective reality that cannot be touched, and guess what? Just happens to line up with what they believe. Myron goes into discussion
Jack Black, sure, why not?
about how a woman would never suck the dick of a fat man like she would a man who's jacked. And he's being dead fucking serious. They go into deep conversation about how all women are just trying to look good for
I
social
mean, Myron doesn't eat pussy, so I mean, you can't take anybody at that word.
media, and they just won't admit how they all want to be plowed by some 6'6" guy with 22-inch biceps. I mean, just take a look at history. Who are the guys who have actually drawn the attention of hundreds of millions of women? Think about the last few years. Who do we got? Timothy Chalamet, Harry Styles, that Jacob Elordi guy, Jungkook, Pedro Pascal. What are
Like thinner, more fit-looking guys. Like they're probably like a little bit fit, but they're thinner, right? Like the jacked men are not generally like I think that jacked guys look really good. I can appreciate like what bodybuilders do with their body because they go through extraordinary amount of like training, and then it takes a lot of intelligence too to be a bodybuilder. That's like very effective. Whether it comes to like the way that you do different exercises, it can be very complicated, and different steroids. But a jacked guy versus a fat guy, I don't know. We're looking at like two extremes here.
we notice in here, people? None of them look like that motherfucker in the orange tank top, that's for sure. These guys sit here for an embarrassingly long amount of time, saying that every woman on the planet wants to be with a guy who's jacked out of his mind, and every woman who ever said she likes the dad bod is lying to themselves. Which is hilarious because this is a classic lonely male cope in a video where these guys complain about fat people coping too much. And this is not to say that...
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, it's another problem too, because the red pill focuses too much on like what's going on the outside, and that is important. You should be healthier, but there's never character building if you notice in any of these red pill spheres. There's never like there's never an appeal to build character in a productive way that's actually going to make you more attainable. Like women like guys that are more attractive physically. Women also like guys who have things going on for themselves. So like if you're a really jacked guy, but like you spend all your time in the gym and you're not really focusing on your career in any like robust capacity, you're not going to be considered very attractive to them. It's just there's a lot of it's a lot going on.
Lots of women don't find muscular men attractive. I'm sure there's a pretty large percentage of women who find the guy in the orange tank top to be the ideal body type for them. And if you polled most people, they would probably be more attracted to a fit person than a fat person. That's just reality. But to sit here and say that no person on the planet can possibly be being honest with themselves, or they're all performing for social media, when they say they prefer a guy who's a little bit bigger rather than a guy who's lean, or even a guy who's just not that muscular, is crazy.
It's a subjective kind of standpoint, but socially, I understand that physically fit men, that's just like what everyone's like. It's like
I don't think it's as subjective as guys are trying to say. Attraction.
I mean, it obviously is subjective. Attraction is subjective, Myron. That's why you constantly shame black women for existing, because you are attracted to white men or a specific black man, actually.
It isn't a choice. And there are hardwired traits that women look for in men. And what I've come to realize is that what women put
Sure, there are general hardwired traits, and then there's a lot of environmental traits as well.
out there is what they find attractive or politically correct things. Oh, he has a dad bod. He's nice. He's a good guy. The reality is that women don't respond well and favorably to these men. There's a reason why nice guys finish last.
Well, I mean, like, let's be absolutely real. Myron is not married. He doesn't have the mental capacity to be married. He could say, I could do it if I wanted to, then do it, pussy. It's the same if I was like, I could just be skinny if I wanted to. Like, okay, then do it, right? And he only gets women because he has money. Like, he's not, we're not talking about somebody who's really very physically attractive. Like, what's the attraction for Myron? He has a lot of money. That's pretty much it. He has an okay upper body. He doesn't really seem to have any legs. I don't really know. He's extraordinarily disrespectful. He fundamentally lacks the ability to commit. In general, he's not a very intelligent person. He's not, I mean, he's a huge fucking nose. He has fake hair. You know, just be bald and be okay with it. You know what I mean? We can say all these things, but at the end of the day, like, the only reason that people gravitate towards you is because you have a lot of money. Like, you don't have any real social skills. We see the way that you act online. You're obnoxious. So it's like, what are you really talking about? You're not charismatic at all, right?
The thing is because when you're too nice and you kind of bend to her will, etc., girls aren't aroused by that. Girls don't want to say what they're really aroused by. Guys that are able to stand up to them, guys that are able to tell them, well, that was a stupid comment.
So just be clear, this guy dates children, right? They're legal adults, but they're children. So you don't really know what women want. You know what 18 and 19-year-old drunk girls that at the bar is, that when you don't drink yourself so that you can lower their defenses. I don't know what you're talking about. This guy acts as if he understands women when he literally dates fucking kids. What are you talking about?
Or hold them accountable for their stupidity when they do dumb things. This is what women find attractive because these are leadership traits.
Have any of those things happened to you, though?
Well, I mean, I've talked to almost 3,000 women, and what I've come to realize from talking to all of them is that most of the time, you know, when they're in the comment section of TikTok, like, you're so handsome, blah, 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 will they actually go on a date and have sex with that guy? Probably not. But they say that because it's politically correct, and women tend to not want to be adversarial. They're going to say what sounds good, but what they're actually aroused by are two different things.
But they're married.
I think another problem with Myron is that he hasn't matured. So, like, as I get older, what I find attractive in women changes. I tend to be more attracted to older women, right? So I go through like a biological change. I imagine it's biological, where I'm like, wow, I like women with like grayer hair or saggier tits. It's just something that kind of gets me going. Myron still wants to fuck 18 and 19-year-old babies, children. Okay, I'm being explicit about the age because he's not a pedophile. He's a fucking weirdo though, being 35 dating. It's immature. It's like pathetic. It's pathetic. And he doesn't understand that. He has like this very like narrow-minded view of like what the world is supposed to look like, but it's just not what the world looks like.
Married to those.
Yeah, that was kind of what I was
Most
getting to.
often they're married
I'm
to
married.
And
to-
marriage is a failed institution in the West, and this is why most men get divorced by women. This is why they get destroyed in the divorce courts. This is why women overwhelmingly initiated the divorce rates in America. 80% are initiated by women.
I think it's actually 70%. But I mean, what are we going to get into the conversation about? Just because a particular person initiates divorce doesn't mean that that person is the reason that the divorce is happening in the first place. Like, you want to get into a whole conversation like why do we think that women initiate divorce more than men? Well, it's probably because women are more expected to do everything in a relationship more than a man. Historically, what are men expected to do? Work, couldn't come home. That's pretty much it. Historically, what are women expected to do? They're expected to take care of their kids, take care of the house. Okay, now we're in 2024. Women are also expected to work. What does that mean? Now women are working the same amount as men, and they're also taking care of the house, and they're taking care of the kids. It's an extraordinary amount of tasks that they're expected to do. So if you're in a miserable relationship where you're a guy who's just working and then coming home and you basically have a maid at the house, if you're in a loveless marriage, you're probably more likely to be like, I don't really care. I'll just cheat on her. She's taking care of my kids and taking care of everything at home, because men also have a different relationship with sex. It's easier for a man to have sex with a woman and not really connect or attach. Whereas a woman is going to need to be like, no, I have to separate in order to move on with my life. So there's like a lot of different things. I'm not saying that's always what's happening, but I'm saying it's just like it's he would agree that he would agree with what a traditional woman's role is. Okay, but not everybody is a rich guy who can take care of a woman, right? Like, and not have to have her work. So women are now doing traditional roles, and they're doing their modern day roles of working, and men aren't really picking up the slack. Men have to contribute more. We have to do more. I know, I'm a man, and I'm fucking lazy. I know. I'm working on it. I threw my back out, so I'm allowed to be lazy now. Thank God I can be a little lazy for right now. But that's a lot of it. That's why women are like, fuck it. I can leave this guy. I have a job. I can take care of myself. It's part of the factor. Something to keep in mind. Thank you so much for $10 from Nero Cedar. I only eat one meal a day, and I'm still overweight at 270 pounds. I don't know what to do, and I'm afraid to eat more. Is it hard? Is it because I hardly work out, or am I eating too little? What the fuck? You're saying that you eat once a day, and you're overweight. You're not eating too little. But I mean, I don't know. It's so vague. I mean, you're eating once a day. I guess that can be fine. Maybe spread your food out, but just introduce something. Just start walking every day, like 20 minutes, and just go from there. Don't make drastic changes. You probably won't stick to drastic changes. That's what I'd say.
Because we sit here and we lie and we believe what women say they're actually attracted to.
So if you couldn't quite
You know what women are attracted to? Getting their fucking pussy eaten, Myron. It's not a joke, okay?
like that means no. He hasn't actually experienced any woman telling him this is what they want. For some reason, men like this cannot fathom.
Yeah, I don't really have a huge issue with communication with my wife. My wife will tell me what she wants. The thing is that people in general, and I would say this is more men, are stupid, right? Myron will say, like, women, they just don't know what they want. They won't tell us. Men struggle to articulate what they want and what they feel like they need in a relationship. That's how that's like men. Like, men can struggle with emotional intelligence, right? So clear-cut communication can sometimes be a little bit difficult for us. It's something that you learn as you get older, and you get a little better at understanding and expressing your feelings. It's like having a mind-muscle connection. Like, if you're somebody out there that's fit, like, you can move your titties, right? Like, you can just make your pec muscles shake without other people have to shake their whole body, but you can just make your pecs, or like you can flex, or you can, those are things that not everybody can necessarily do. They can't feel like doing some kind of like a deadlift and feel it in their hamstrings. They can't do a squat and feel it in their quads. They're just going through a movement. They don't have mind muscle connection, right? Emotional intelligence is the same. It's like, it's not mind muscle, it's mind emotion intelligence is the same way. If you're not using that part of your body, you're not in touch with your emotions, you're going to have like a similar thing. So to say like, oh, well, women don't know what they want, or they don't understand how to develop, men don't understand how to talk about the shit that they want either, right? It's a struggle for men. It can be very difficult for us to communicate like feelings. So again, like, I don't know, just dumb as fuck.
The idea that a woman might want a person who's pleasant to be around as a partner. They can't find a girlfriend, they can't form a meaningful relationship with a woman, so they blame it on the world and say that all women are actually lying instead of looking within. Furthermore, yeah, this is definitely an age of social media thing. Every woman across the planet is lying.
My favorite thing is Myron says that women are lying all the time, but he literally, like, that's the whole strategy for Red Pill, is to lie to women. Pretend that you're interested in them more than just sex, and then manipulate them, be a fuckboy, and then dump them afterwards. Like, that's the whole strategy. What do you mean? Like, you're advocating for men to be liars, as you say that women always lie. It's so silly.
Saying they don't like super jacked guys for social media points. That's why the Beatles got so popular in the 60s, right? Because of Instagram? I mean, yeah, that's gotta be it. That also explains Elvis, Queen, David Bowie, Prince, Michael Jackson, every boy band literally ever. Also every emo band literally ever. Bruno Mars, Justin Bieber, Shawn Mendes, The Weeknd. I mean, I could literally sit here and name off every single popular male artist ever. None of these guys are jacked. Most of them are pretty skinny. They're not going out telling women to shut up and do this or do that. Most of them are relatively soft-spoken.
Or they're just like molesting kids, right? Like in Hollywood, you know what I mean?
In communities like Myron's, they'd probably be labeled as feminine, but for some reason, they seem to be pretty popular with women. How could that be? Is it possible that a lot of men just cope by saying that a woman would never love me unless I have a Herculean body type, as a way to perpetually explain the reason why they don't?
Just to be clear, guys, back in the days, the Hercules times, they liked small wieners. So you're sitting here saying, "Oh, I want a guy that's in shape. I want a guy that's fit. I want this." Well, I got one of those Herculean bodily attributes. So stop looking over me, ladies.
Have a girlfriend? Because you can always get more muscular, you can always get leaner, and maybe, just maybe, they say that women actually want to be treated like shit, so they don't have to work on their garbage personality, and they just get to say, oh, well, social media is making these women hide what they actually want.
Who's saying bad words? Oh, you're saying slurs, and now you're saying the R slur. I don't like the R slur, guys. Not a big fan of it. And now you're calling my mod pathetic? What the fuck? You're a weirdo. That's so weird that like the primary way that you need to function in the world is by using specific words. It's very bizarre to me. I mean, that's fine, man. You can go use those words somewhere else. I don't know. Why are you arguing? It's interesting. I'm gonna go on a little tangent. I don't like slurs, guys. Hot take. Everything aside, like I don't particularly care for like the R slur. I know other people are fine with it in their chats. I don't like it. Not a big fan of it. If you're a person that uses it, I don't think you're a horrible person. I'm not a big fan of it. It is a slur. And I think that we should respect the weight that that word carries and the way that it can hurt a lot of people. I do. My wife's a behavioral specialist for people with adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. I obviously, treat that word as more serious. If you don't, that's fine. What I find interesting is that like you came into the chat, you used a word. My mod was like, barbecue. She's like, hey, I don't like that word, me. And you're like, this is pathetic. Why are you so sensitive? Why is the world you live in so pathetic that you not being able to use one word stunts your ability to talk or exist? It's weird. It's childish. It's immature. I don't really understand. People online probably think that you're super base and like, oh, see, it's just a word. People in the real world would look at you and be like, why is this your priority in life? This is pathetic loser shit. It's a word you were asked not to use. Nobody called you and said you're a bad person. I just think you're a fucking moron because you live and die on a fucking word. It's really weird. Like, it's just pathetic. It's just bizarre. I don't understand. So yeah, you could just fucking ban him every time he says something. I don't really care.
Trust me, bro, when I tell girls on the street that they need to get back in the kitchen, they might slap me and walk away calling me an asshole, but they really want to hop on my dick. If you're a young man getting caught up in this kind of thinking, I promise you, this is not the way that you are going to find a relationship. You are a human. This should be pretty intuitive.
Yeah, I would say don't argue with people. Like if they use the word and you say, hey, don't use that, and then they come back and be like, oh, it's stupid, just ban them. Who cares? I don't have a particular high value. Not everybody needs to speak in my chat. I don't really care. That's pretty much it. Like I'm not worried about that type of person like no longer consuming my content. It doesn't matter to me. Like I'm okay with it because at the end of the day, they're probably still going to consume the content. They're just going to be sore about it. You know what I mean? That's really what it boils down to. That's it.
Most people want to be treated with respect and be with a person that they enjoy being.
Exactly, guys. It's about respect.
Around. It's not that hard. I promise you. You are not too ugly. You are not too hideous to find somebody who's going to love you.
I disagree. You're ugly as shit. Just kidding.
Not. I guarantee it. You do not need to look like Arnold or drive a Lamborghini or do anything that these guys will have you believe you need to do to find anybody who's interested in you. Do me a favor. Try and think of one single person who looks like this guy in the orange tank top, who's a celebrity, whose fan base is made up of primarily women. For
yeah, you really can't.
Some reason, an absurdly high amount of men will not believe basically every woman on the planet, saying that the ideal guy is mainly just a guy who looks like a normal person. Don't believe me? Go ask your mom who she'd rather sleep with. This guy in the orange tank top or Paul Rudd. If believing that all women
that's probably true, yeah.
actually want a guy who's so yoked out of his mind that he can't even fit through doorways anymore, helps you feel better about being single, don't complain about other people coping.
Well, this is the thing. And again, when it comes to somebody who's like really jacked, that takes an extraordinary amount of commitment and work to do. And that's like a beautiful thing. And if that's your hobby and that's your lifestyle, do it. But one of the things is, and the reason why there's really like no mainstream celebrity who's like really jacked that people are like all over and women like love, it's because it's not just that it's like an unattainable physique that's intimidating to some women. The lifestyle is also not exactly ideal. Most people don't want to live an extraordinarily restrictive lifestyle where you hyper obsess about your micro and macronutrients. That's it, right? And just in the same way, where a lot of people don't want to, date somebody who's fat as fuck, eats like shit all the time. So it's going to be another thing that counts against you.
And we don't hold anybody accountable, and we allow mediocrity to strive in the West. And I think we need to go back to shaming fat people. We need to go back to making fun of them. I mean,
we already do shame and make fun of. And we should make fun. I think you should be able to make fun of everything, respectfully, of course. I don't like disrespectful jokes. That's the problem.
I mean, if I was president, hell, I'd put all of them in a fat concentration camp so they can concentrate on dieting and exercising because we
would have like no truck drivers left, by the way. I know that he doesn't really mean this because he's a fucking idiot, but like we'd have like no people that are able to do jobs that you would never be able to do yourself.
Fat is completely not acceptable. I'd have these people back in shape, because what people don't also understand is that fat people bring a big burden on the healthcare system. Obesity, diabetes.
I mean, we don't have, they can, absolutely, but we also don't have like universal health care, so this is not necessarily that big of an issue, is it?
Heart disease, etc. It's a big problem.
Do you really mean that, or are you just saying that?
I'm dead ass. Yeah, if I was president, make me president, I would get rid of the obesity problem like that.
Alrighty, and
he wouldn't. We would like not for anything, but like we would as a society we would fracture. If you took all fat people and put them in a concentration camp, we would as a society we would fracture, because a lot of people are fat because of the very difficult jobs that they have to perform, like truck driving, that are very difficult to do when you don't see your family and shit. So like, he's not serious. He's never put any real thought into this. He doesn't like fat people, which is fine. And then he wants to be additionally provocative for attention, because he's a woman. Like he's desperate for attention. He's desperate. He's a very feminine man that desperately wants people to acknowledge his existence. So he continuously says provocative things for attention, just like a woman would do. I'm just kidding. That's what he would say a woman would be like. So it's interesting that he behaves in that way. But that's unrealistic. The fucking job market would crash.
I think that's where I've had enough. Guys, it's literally an hour of stuff like this. I could sit here for so long and just pick apart everything these guys say, but honestly, it's just not worth it. Pretty much everything.
Oh, you can't, because then Jubilee will have a fucking crybaby meltdown about it.
I think this guy says warrants like 10 minutes worth of talking. At one point, he says that everybody who's depressed deserves to be. He quadruples down on his idea that shaming everybody for everything.
It's interesting, because have you ever heard ignorance is bliss? I truly think that there are some people, and one of the reasons why they might be depressed is because they're maybe a little too smart and a little too self-aware. For somebody like Myron, who's not aware of himself or anything that's really going on around him, obviously he wouldn't understand depression, because he's not thinking. A lot of times when I get depressed, it's just me constantly thinking about things that are going on in my life, potentially obsessing about the future, trying to be like really calculated in how I operate moving forward. But at a certain point, it almost becomes counterintuitive, because then I start to become very stressed about the things that are going to happen. I get stressed about, like, wait, this thing could happen. That's not good. And I get into like an entire loop of like the most negative loop ever, mostly because, like, you know, I'm trying to prepare myself for the worst, but then not only do I prepare myself for the worst, I'm almost fulfilling the prophecy that the worst is going to happen. And again, for somebody who lacks like fundamentally self-awareness, they almost are advantaged because they don't think. They're stupid and they don't think about things. So it's easier for them to move about the day in a lot of cases. So
thing is the best way to get change. And look, I myself have been a public supporter of bringing back shaming, but there's a difference between shaming somebody for something like saying being 200 pounds overweight is good for you, there's no problems, stuff like that, and shaming a person because you don't like the way they look. Two completely different things right there. It's really just a complete mess of a video, but I've got to cut myself off somewhere, and this is where I'm deciding to do it. If you want to have even more of a headache, be my guest and watch the original. It only gets worse, I promise. Well, guys, what do you think? Should we send everybody who's not 7% body fat to prison? Should doing anything that might...
Well, I mean, I think women hold their average. What's a woman's healthy body fat? 8 to 12%, or is that for men? I think. Well, women they're healthier at a little bit higher body fat. But
Myron doesn't like be a federal offense. I'm starting to think he's onto something. Wrapping this video up, I feel like this video might end up having kind of an all over the place vibe, considering the fact that I tried to condense an hour and a half of footage into a video under 20 minutes. But hey, that's fine. Unless it's not, I'll have to ask Myron. This might be an offense punishable by death. We'll have to see. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like.
Okay. Well, I like that video. I'm not subscribed to this guy, so let's do that. Yeah, I like this guy's content. That was a pretty solid video. We yapped a lot, though.